Hello, friends. Recently, I've been the victim of a significant theft. Not a theft of my money or possessions, but rather of my time. You see, one day I was perusing Steam when the cold, merciless eyes of Gaben glanced down upon me and recommended a little game called Boneraiser Survivors. This looks great, I thought. Just a fun little game to play between being productive and making videos. How wrong I was. I was dragged down into a rabbit hole that has utterly consumed me. I fear I might never be able to escape, nor will I want to. And the scariest part, it could happen to you. Reverse bullet hells, survivor games, auto shooter roguelites, or simply bullet heavens are a new genre of games where you, the player, need to build up an absurd arsenal of weapons, powers, and summons to fend off ever and rapidly increasing hordes of enemies, in a desperate bid to beat the timer and win before the timer beats you. I'd like you to feast your eyes on the pinnacle of modern gameplay. The bullet heaven genre is the beautiful child of bullet hells and roguelites, who was raised in a loving home and went on to be extremely successful. Unlike the MOBA genre, who was conceived by two crack addicts behind a Denny's, suplexed by the doctor who delivered them, and then forced to grow up in New Jersey. The average run of these games will go something like this. You'll select your character and stage, pop in with an absolutely pitiful amount of firepower, and enemies already on the way. From here, you'll kill enemies and collect experience to acquire upgrades and powers. Repeat the process at an aggressively escalating pace, probably with an occasional boss thrown in, until either you or the mobs overwhelm each other. In the last few minutes of a run, you should either be an immortal god, sitting back, waiting for the timer to run out as enemies helplessly throw themselves into your radiance, or sitting there on the edge of your seat, clenching hard enough to make diamonds in your colon, knowing that a single mistake could rip victory right out of your grasp. Or the dreaded third option, realizing that the enemies are overwhelming you a lot faster than you can grow in power, knowing that the last 25 minutes of your life were frankly for nothing and you'll never get them back. And as you sit there, watching the last little bits of your health bar tick away, you can only think to yourself, fuck this game. Upon winning, you'll probably unlock something new, which is how the game tricks you into doing another round. This is the general experience, but individual games will have plenty to stand out. The games still share plenty of DNA with their hellish counterparts. Instead of being Swiss cheesed by bullets, it's skeletons, knights, slimes, and milk. What sets them apart is that a bullet hell requires a high degree of skill to be successful, requiring you to dodge a shitload of projectiles. Because of the limited control input and roguelite aspects, bullet heavens instead require a high degree of strategy. Some games will have an element of dodging, but it's inevitable that you're going to find yourself surrounded, and these games are much less about evading and much more about crafting a build to fight your way out. Finding which powers or weapons will work well together, deciding whether to get a new power or upgrade an existing one, and weighing the risk versus reward of going for items that are in sketchy spots are some of the tactical decisions you'll need to make in order to gather enough firepower to keep the unwashed masses at bay. There's very rarely downtime to collect yourself. Once the game starts, you're being swarmed. So alongside the normal dopamine rush of seeing a build come together, there's also the desperation to not become a recreation of Astroworld. Watching your build work out is satisfying, but needing it to work out is a whole different thing entirely, and I live for that shit. The cycle of going from weak and fragile to stupid powerful has stolen an untold amount of time from me, and will continue to do so. But just playing the game is simply the surface of what's been so time consuming. Friends, I'd like to welcome you to the wonderful world of unlocks and meta progression. Now, if you're anything like me, introducing these to you will be like how the CIA introduced crack to black neighborhoods in the 80s. One of the best parts of bullet heavens is unlocking new characters or weapons. Items are unlocked by completing challenges, or better yet, secrets during the run. Every item adds variety to future runs, and does wonders for adding to replayability. 30 minutes can be a lot of time just to unlock an item, but if that item happens to be a witch whose main weapon is cats that can then be upgraded into giant floating eyeballs that help you make money, you better believe I'm doing a run to test her out. Meta progression, along with sounding like something that should get you shoved inside of a locker, is how you get stronger outside of your runs. Many games will give you some way of collecting currency during your runs to spend on permanent buffs. These systems can go from very basic, like just leveling up stats, to very creative. These two are the backbone of what gives the player a sense of progression while they play, and they'll be elaborated on a little later. Now that you're more familiar with the genre, it's time to get familiar with some of the games. This video wouldn't be fully complete, nor would you, the viewer, be properly informed if I didn't spend a decent amount of time glazing Vampire Survivors. It's a pioneer of the genre, heavily popularized it, and has easily stolen the most time from me. In fact, this whole video is a product of me trying to justify all the time I've spent playing it instead of editing. Vampire Survivors, an ironic name, is a Castlevania-inspired bullet heaven and is my personal recommendation to anyone looking to get into the genre. When I first loaded in and heard the OST start up, I had a feeling I wouldn't be getting much work done for the foreseeable future. I don't think it's medically possible to become chemically addicted to a video game, but I feel like a shitty coworker looking for every opportunity to sneak out for a smoke break. I have legitimately considered burning a sick day to stay home and play. Vampire Survivors has extremely solid basics that makes it easy for anyone to get into, but it was some of the more advanced features that managed to hook me in. When you level up, you get a choice between weapons or passive items. You get 6 slots for each, and choosing the correct ones can make all the difference in a run. But the strategy doesn't just stop there. Combining the right weapon with the right passive will let you evolve it into a superior version of that weapon. These evolved weapons are game-changingly better than the originals, and make an excellent addition to your self-defense meat grinder. Not every game in the genre uses numbers to display damage, and frankly I'm not going to fault them for that. They're functionally useless, as I don't know the max health of any given enemy. But this right here, this just does something special to me. There's an incredible variety of items, characters, and maps, and an absolute shitload of unlockables, including a list of how to get them all, and don't even get me started on the secrets. You could not possibly imagine how deep the rabbit hole goes. I like to try and combo together different unlock challenges at the same time, and try to get as many per run as I can, which leads to some pretty wacky builds, but a fun new layer of challenges, and stops me from getting infinite corridor every run. If you think the base game is a nice slice of content, just wait till you hear about the DLCs. Okay, you don't have to wait anymore. Operation Guns is to Contra what Vampire Survivors is to Castlevania. Although Operation Guns is Vampire Survivors, therefore mathematically, Contra is Castlevania. I've gotten off track. Even though I'm absolutely addicted to this game, as an American, I couldn't shake the feeling that it must be missing something. What the fuck is a kilometer? Operation Guns feels like it could have been made into its own game rather than DLC. It adds new characters and, more importantly, new weapons. The guns fit in really well, not aesthetically speaking per se, but they're extremely fun and make a great addition to the game. While you were partying, I studied the bleed. Legacy of the Moonspell and Tides of the Let's just pretend I said the name right. Add new characters, new weapons, and new maps. They add a lot more variety to the game, while also fitting with the aesthetic a lot better than the previous 2 DLCs. Simpler in nature, but don't let that discount from their value at all. They're still plenty of fun and definitely worth it. Welcome to Vampire Survivors 2. Ode to Castlevania is a massive DLC where you explore Dracula's castle, unlocking a shit ton of new characters, weapons, and enemies. How many characters is a shit ton? I don't know, try 80. The sheer amount of content that's added for $4 is frankly ridiculous. The new map is massive, so big that you'll need multiple runs to be able to traverse it all until you unlock the teleporters, and even then, it's still a trek to get around. The castle is full of cool optional boss fights featuring classic bosses from across the franchise, including a doppelganger fight with this weird perspective shift. Most of the maps in these games are pretty bare bones, just a square with some obstacles, if even, really just a stage for the gameplay. Vampire Survivors has always been great at making innovative maps, but this one absolutely knocks it out of the park. As for the new characters, you get all your classic Belmonts to play around with. This DLC's got more whips in it than that weird building with all the mean ladies in it. It's a DLC clearly made with a lot of love. It's a testament not only to the skill, but the passion of the developers at Ponkel. Last but not least, this DLC, we finally get to survive a vampire. I mentioned roguelike qualities earlier, like the randomized chance and getting stronger between runs, but another good quality any good roguelike has is the ability to break the game. Now, it's not that hard to get to the point where you, the player, are completely unnecessary, especially if you're my friend Aaron, who just starts gold farming runs and then goes to bed. The run then continues until, for the sake of his poor computer, he manually stops it at 11 hours. But let's talk about another way to break the game. Walls. You know them, you hate them, who needs them, fuck them. In order to prevent the player from walking through walls and ascending to godhood, the game uses these things called wall checks. Wall checks, as per the name, are collision checks to see if the player is attempting to Kool-Aid Man their way through the map. The best part about these wall checks is that we can overpower them. The more bullshit happening on your screen, the more processing power you take from the game. Processing power that would otherwise be used for the aforementioned wall checks, allowing you to occasionally slip through while it's too busy. Now, combine all that with increased movement speed from the Rapidus Fio weapon, and you'll be able to run through walls before the game has the ability to check them, meaning that you can pretty much fuck off out of bounds. Now, if any of that is incorrect, I should disclose that my source is some guy off Reddit, and if that's wrong, oops. Besides just the gameplay itself, like I said, the soundtrack is amazing, and if you can listen to this chest opening sound and not feel joy, you might be incapable of it. So, Vampire Survivors is basically like the perfect standard experience of a bullet heaven. It created and perfected the basics, so now I want to show you some more unique takes on the genre. Death Must Die is a bullet heaven that does a lot to stand out in the genre. For as much time as I spent talking up Vampire Survivors as the king of bullet heavens, this one's honestly my favorite. The story goes that all the gods got together and decided that they've had enough of Death, who's currently not in the game, and therefore, but in true godly fashion, if you want something done right, you gotta trap 6 mortals in a time loop. The first thing that I really appreciate about Death Must Die is that it gives you a lot more control than most games in the genre. Bullet heavens aren't exactly known for their input-intensive gameplay. Not only does the game give you a dash, which you will become very familiar with, but your attack is also done manually rather than automatic. You can of course toggle auto-aim, but being able to aim is an advantage, and besides, a real gamer would just develop carpal tunnel. The powers take a lot of inspiration from the hit game Hades. Upon level up, you'll get a choice between 3 upgrades from one of your patron gods. The main gods currently available in game are Summer, Crom, Mort, Winter, Legong, Lady Justice, and Humana 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 Humana. In every run, 3 of these main gods will appear to offer you blessings. There's also a chance that Time and the Fates can appear to help as well. The blessings the gods give you mostly focusing on augmenting your existing abilities like your dash and attack. There are casts and summons which function independent of you, but everything is balanced out to where your character feels like they're getting stronger rather than just your items. The game never loses that feeling of you versus the horde, or has a lull in the action. It never hits that cookie clicker stage that Vampire Survivors does, where it feels like you could die at your keyboard and still win the stage. Even when you have an excessive amount of summons, if you aren't at least focused on dodging, you will lose the run. The blessings you get have different levels to them. The higher the rarity, the better the blessing. If you ever see a blessing ranked as legendary, well, you can go ahead and stop reading there. If you get the chance to grab the alteration blessing, it gives you a random blessing every time you level up. It doesn't sound like much, but it's actually pretty powerful and a nice helpful way to add some chaos to your runs. Another thing I really appreciate about the game is the enemy variety. Along with the never-ending horde of skeletons and slimes are other stronger enemy types and elite variants. These stronger enemies have unique attacks and occasional gimmicks that add variety and keeps you on your toes. On top of more interesting enemy types, this game also does bosses extremely well. Instead of just being a big bullet sponge, they're fleshed out with their own unique movesets and gimmicks. Defeating a boss will drop Cosmic Essence. Cosmic Essence is used to upgrade your characters. Upgrade your characters? What is this, meta? The meta progression system for this game is split into Cosmic Essence and items. Collected Cosmic Essence can be spent to progress through unlocking skills on the skill tree. These can be a simple stat boost or unlocking new skills altogether, like unique status conditions or permanent summons. Tiers are unlocked by spending points, and points have a cap of 36 per character, meaning that you can only pick one of the final tier upgrades. As much fun as it would be to have a character that has a 50% chance to revive, 108 additional attack power, all blessings are adept at minimum with a higher chance to be expert, and has temporary invincibility anytime he takes damage, the game definitely takes its balancing seriously, so I get why they don't want to let you do that. Throughout the game, you'll be able to collect items. These items can be equipped to give your character higher stats, higher chances to get rare blessings, and permanent blessing effects. I absolutely love the equipment system in this game. I like how it feels like playing an MMO, and it gives me reasons to keep playing even after beating both current acts. But most of all, I love my permanent army of 28 skeletons. The game is still in development with only the first 2 acts available. Act 1 is an extremely solid introduction to the gameplay loop while you figure out your style and what your favorite blessings are. Act 2 is where you'll really need to put those skills to the test. The enemies here are a lot more challenging, taking more advantage of range, AoE, and just general aggression. The final boss has a strong moveset, and if you aren't careful, you can die from a single attack. That being said, the items that drop here are objectively better than most of the items from Act 1, so you'll definitely get something shiny for your troubles. The first 2 acts are plenty in terms of content, but the game also has a roadmap available, showing that they plan to add new characters, new blessings, new talents, Act 3, duo blessings, set items. This game is $7, why are you still here? She bonin' on my razor till I minion. She bonin' on my minion till I razor. Whatever, it's fine. It's not important to the video. She minion. Boneraiser Minions is an extremely unique entry into the genre. For starters, the Boneraiser you play as is a pacifist and has no offensive abilities yourself. All your fighting is done for you by the undead minions you raise. She minion. Come on, dude, it could start with she minion. Let me cook. Your minions fight for you automatically. Your only job is to collect bones to upgrade them and to not die. Using bones, you can raise new minions, including multiple of the same type, which you can then fuse together into giant minions. Or, if you upgrade the same minion enough, you can transform it into a demon. Demons are easily my favorite, and being that they're the strongest of the bunch, they come with a cap. Everything I love has a cap. Besides just the more managerial method of combat, the meta progression system has the standard self-upgrades that we know and love, but also comes with an additional system to add to and strengthen the enemies. This not only adds in some fun challenge, but also allows you to get more bones quicker and build up your undead army of the damned that much earlier. Because remember kids, a stranger is just a skeleton you haven't met yet. I really like this game. Summons are a cool but frankly overlooked feature in these games. Most of the time they're basically just glorified orbiters, but in this game they actually fight on their own. Guarding you sure, but they still feel like their own independent entities. Also props to Death Must Die for also doing summons well. She raised it on my minion till I bone. Yes! Some games that aren't breaking the mold but are still very solid entries into the genre are Brotato, 20 Minutes Till Dawn, and Soulstone Survivors. You'll have seen some of the gameplay from these games put in throughout the video, and I highly recommend giving them a shot. The short answer is fun. The problem with the short answer is that it's vague, unhelpful, borderline insulting, and definitely retarded. Which is why we'll be going with the far superior answer of replayability. Bullet heavens are games meant to be played through over and over. So the ultimate question of quality is that why after spending 30 minutes of your life on a stage, should you, the player, want to hop back in? In my opinion, the key to replayability is to give the player a sense of progression, which is why unlocks and meta progression systems are so important. An innate human desire, woven into our very souls, is the want, nay, the need, to watch number go up. You can see it in our education, our economy, from our elderly citizens to our Sigma males. There's something about these mathematics that tickles the dopamine receptors in a very special way. Players are going to want more to do, more to unlock, and more challenging content to use those unlocks on. I want to get stronger, not bored. Excellent ways to keep things fun are harder maps, optional bosses and secrets, challenge stages, and of course, the mother of all replayability, endless modes. Endless modes are like the ultimate test of everything you've learned in a game. The more stuff you unlock and the better at strategy you get, the longer you'll last. Get good enough, and eventually you'll surpass fighting the in-game enemies and begin the true final boss fight. Player versus graphics card. All the games I've mentioned here today are amazing at getting you to play just one more round. Bullet Heavens have quickly worked their way into being one of, if not my favorite genre of game. There's a lot of gems out there, and most of the time, they're going to be pretty cheap too. Bullet Heaven doesn't seem to be its own tag on Steam yet, so just look for bullet hells that are tagged with a whole bunch of other shit and probably has Survivor in the name somewhere. And use that discerning eye of yours to identify one that looks good to you. Then you too can be robbed of your free time. Well, that's enough rambling for one video. This took me a very long time to write and even longer to edit, so you better have enjoyed it. I'm staring at the Vampire Survivors Steam page right now, and I believe it's staring back. The play button is whispering sweet nothings to me, and I'm geeking. Until next time, friends.